I'll get it turned up. Keep talking.
Okay, I'm going to start this. My name is Robert Lyons. I'm a past president of the Pachyderm Clubs for the Metro East. Pachyderms is a group that's national. They've got national clubs. The group here is trying to get citizens much better. Trying to get citizens active into the political process. Our belief is that the better educated you are, the better choices you can make at the ballot box. We don't care who you vote for, other than being a Republican. But we do believe that the more you know about the choices, the better you will be in choosing the best candidate. We'd like to thank, we have 3 candidates up here today. We'd like to thank Roger Cook, Teresa Kormos, and Jason Plummer for agreeing to this forum. And the moderators, we haven't really had to do much yet, but I will tell you, standing in front of a group, even after being the president for a year, is still a little nervous. So I want to thank Dr. Federer and Dr. Beabout. I know I messed it up, but that's as close as I can get. For agreeing to be moderators for this event. There's a couple other people who helped set this event up, and I'm not going to go in the order that Sue typed them, because I'm going to go in the order I think of deserving, is Sue and Guy Don Carlos, who've really been doing a lot. Barb Viviano, Bob White, and Kathy Weimer. And I didn't put them in the top tier, but they still did a lot. And let me tell you, having been in this boat, just being an active participant and helping put something like this together takes a lot of courage and a lot of effort. And they have done a magnificent job in doing that. A couple of administrative things to start with. Everybody check that your phone is in the vibrate mode or turn it off. I think you'd be highly embarrassed if in the middle of one of the candidates answering a question your phone went off. Dr. Federer is an author, an American historian, and he's going to be selling some of his books in the back. We've got 2 of them, great reads. Highly encourage you to take a look at those books because they will help get you educated in America. And Dr. Beabout, I'm going to get this right one of these days, professor of philosophy at SLU. Great for him to come over here and help us with the event. Second page. Okay, now let's get into the rules of this event. Each moderator is going to pull a question from his box and present it to the candidate. Now let's go over these. Dr. Beabout is going to be doing Illinois issues, and his question will start with Roger Cook, and then Teresa Kormos, and then Jason Plummer. Dr. Federer is going to be doing federal issues, and he will start with Teresa Kormos, Jason Plummer, and then Roger Cook. And I will be doing miscellaneous issues, and I'll start with Jason Plummer, Roger Cook, Teresa Kormos. Each candidate will have a minute and a half to answer the question. If one of the other candidates has something they want to say in relationship to the candidate answering the question, they will have a minute and a half themselves to give their opinion. If they both want to, they both have a minute and a half to give their opinion, and then the person who originally got the question will have 30 seconds for rebuttal. At the end of that time, we'll go to the next question, the next issue. I'm also going to be playing the bad cop, so I'll let the candidates know. When the timer says your time is up, I'll give you 5 seconds to finish your thought, and then I will step on you and say you're done. So be aware, we're not going to do it like the National where they just keep on talking. Your time is done, your time is done, we're going to go to the next question. That's your warning. And with that, without further ado, I'll pass this to Greg.
Good.
Oh, yes, let's do that. Go ahead. For the Packeters, we always do the Pledge of Allegiance. And as Mary has rightfully corrected me on, I should have started that out. I'm just going to talk. I talk loud. So if everybody would face the flag and repeat after me. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And like a baseball game, let's get started.
Thank you. I don't know if it's significant that they put the SLU philosophy professor on the left. But yeah, from their point of view, I'm on the right, so here we go. This is a question from Ted Greenfield in Belleville. If we want to reduce government, Congress should not be focusing on special interest groups. And that includes, it would seem, Scott Air Force Base. The nation is collapsing under government and high taxes. It seems for every small cut, there's someone in Congress saying, we can't cut this out of the budget. How would you change this attitude in Congress, stop this dependence on big government, especially in light of Scott Air Force Base? So we'll begin with Roger and then Teresa and Jason. Roger.
In 1995, as mayor of Belleville, I, along with other mayors, community leaders throughout the Metro East area, had the opportunity to work on the Base Realignment and Closure Commission. Alan Dixon, former senator, was chairman of the BRAC Commission. Congressman Costello, of course, was working from his end, and we raised money to market and promote and sell Scott Air Force Base. Scott Air Force Base stood on its own. We didn't have to do all that. Scott Air Force Base today is even better than it was. The missions are more important to our national defense. So I'm not concerned about going to Washington, D.C. and worrying about having to prop up Scott Air Force Base to keep it here, creating jobs. Its importance to our national defense and its missions, they stand alone. Up in Washington, D.C., I believe I'm against earmarks. I'm proud of the Republican Congress up there now that have stopped it, and I will continue to support that. I believe that all legislation should come through committee. I don't think that because you've been a career politician, an insider, a political hack that's been up there 20 years, that you ought to have more power to be able to bring the bacon home to get reelected. So I'll stand up and fight it like I fought it here in Belleville 20 years ago. Thank you.
Yes, I believe in reducing the federal government by auditing all the federal agencies, seeing what works, what doesn't work, what can be sent to the states, because the government closest to the people is the better. But with regard to our national security, the number one priority of our federal government is to protect its borders and its citizens. And I believe that money should be directed to build up our military and expand the roles at Scott Air Force Base, because we know that we have a lot of land out there, considering Mid-America Airport, that we can expand the missions, because we live in dangerous times. It's not just about nuclear anymore. It's about biological, chemical, cyber warfare, and in the near future, electromagnetic pulses. We need to have a military that can respond to any of these scenarios and rapidly deploy as well. So I believe that we need to expand the role at Scott, see that there's proper training. As far as electromagnetic pulses, we have to make sure that our electronics are shielded and as well. So I believe I'm very pro-military, and that is the number one concern of the federal government.
Well, a lot of times when you're out on the stump, when you're at events like this, the first thing people ask you is, why are you running for office? What's your number one goal in Washington, D.C.? Some people say, well, I want to lower taxes. Some people say, I want to cut spending, I want to repeal Obamacare, whatever it may be. I tell people all the time, constantly and consistently, my number one goal when I go to Washington, D.C. is to shrink the size and scope of government. When you shrink, go ahead, clap. When you shrink the size and scope of government, you will lower taxes, you will cut spending, you will repeal overburdensome regulations like Obamacare. But I also think we need to identify what the proper role of government is. And the federal government does provide good function and it does have a role in society. I think its #1 role is providing for the national defense. I'm an intelligence officer. My intel unit is based at Scott Air Force Base, and I can tell you that Scott Air Force Base plays a great role in the local economy, but it plays a phenomenal role in national defense. And I'm proud that it's in our congressional district. I'm going to fight to make sure we bring more missions to Scott Air Force Base because it is a great facility and it performs its function, which is an important function, well. The other thing I would say is that, you know, when I was at the Heritage Foundation in 2005, Republicans controlled the House, they controlled the Senate, and they were in the White House, and we had ridiculous federal spending. And when I'd march over to Capitol Hill every day and we meet with Republican congressmen, they were the ones pushing earmarks. They were the ones pushing bloated bills that were bad. I fought against them when Republicans did it. I'm fighting against it when Democrats do it. 87 new freshmen went to Congress in 2010. They've changed the discussion from growing spending to cutting spending. I'm going to be another voice to make sure we continue to cut spending.
Second question, TARP bailed out Bank of America, Wells Fargo, JP Morgan. Though they look financially good today, the truth is they are still insolvent. If the time comes that they need another bailout, would you give it to them and why, or why not? And would you tighten or loosen banking regulations? And we could add to this the stimulus money going to Solandra and George Soros's Petrobras or Embraer airplane manufacturing with defense contracts. What do you see as the role there with the federal government's spending?
Well, I believe in the free market system, and if we truly believe in that, we have to allow for success and failure. And I do not support the bailouts. I just believe, again, in the free market system, and as far as repealing, I think that the things like the Dodd-Frank bill needs to be repealed because it had nothing to do with not enough regulation. It had to do with lack of providing the oversight and enforcing it. So that is what, if I'm answering all your question there with that response, I am not in favor, nor would I vote for any future bailouts as well.
Well, I think the bank bailouts were bad. I think that the other bailouts that the federal government has committed taxpayer money to is bad. I think if you look at the state of Illinois, we see firsthand the problems that this type of government has. And let's be honest, the folks running in D.C. right now, they came from Chicago via Springfield, Illinois, and the impact they've had on Springfield is brutal. We argued against, when I was running for lieutenant governor, against taxes, for cutting the state budget. What did we do? We raised taxes drastically. We see people and businesses flee the state. And then when marquee names like the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, or when Sears says, hey, we're going to leave the state of Illinois because your policies are bad, we bail out Sears. And what do? They shut down stores in Illinois, including one in the 12th Congressional District. Bailouts are bad. That's not the role of government. Solyndra is a train wreck. And we can all talk about Solyndra, but for every Solyndra, we can name off dozens of other companies just like that. Again, what's the role, what's the proper role of government? It's grown beyond all the original intents and purposes of our founding fathers. The bailouts did not work. You're right, some of the banks are still insolvent. The housing crisis is a huge problem because those banks are holding 6 million homes that are underwater off the balance sheet still. And when those homes come onto the market, the housing crisis is a long way off, folks. We are far, far, far away from solving that problem. There will be more companies, there will be more industries asking for bailouts, and when I go to Washington, D.C., I will fight against those bailouts because I don't think taxpayer money should be used to bail out people who spent that money frivolously.
I am absolutely opposed to the TARP bailouts, the too big to fail banks. All we got out of that was prop them up. We got the Dodd-Frank legislation that trying to address the too big to fail banks, and what it comes down to our small community banks throughout our 12 congressional districts, the $60 million banks and assets, the 100 million, 120, the 30s, the 40 million. They're getting crucified over regulated. They're afraid to loan money because the regulators will come in, classify them. They take money out of their loan loss reserve, or add it to the loan loss reserve, take it capital out, it weakens the position of the bank. They're killing the small community banks, our job creators, the people that loan to us. When I started with nothing and went into my local bank and asked for a loan, signed it, and got a loan. You can't do that today. We got to get government out of the way, quit picking winners and losers, and let the free market go. And this country will take off. Thanks.
question. This question came from Bob White, Metro East PACCARN member. Contrary to what Catherine Sebelius and Planned Parenthood claim, free contraception is not free and is intrusive. And yet forcing certain groups to provide it is a violation of one's religion. How would you change this so this is not a violation against the Privacy Act as determined in our First Amendment right?
Well, I don't think that it will be changed legislatively. Obviously, if there's a path to do that, I would be a part of that. I think it will be changed judicially, because I think that a lot of these issues that we see right now are constitutional questions. And I think what we see going on, I mean, I tell people all the time, if you look at the economy right now, if you look at Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, Iran, if you look at fuel prices, if you look at everything that's going on right now, the fact that we're hauling a law student from Georgetown Law School in front of a panel in Congress to discuss contraceptives at Georgetown Law School is absurd, and it's why Congress has an 8% approval rating. We need serious people who are calm, measured people that can go to Washington, D.C. to solve the problems we care about. This is a constitutional question. I think that it is ridiculous. I don't think that a private business, I don't think that a university, I don't think anybody should be forced by government to do something that violates their moral conscience. I think that this is an issue that resonates not just because of the contraceptive debate, but the fact that government is forcing people to do stuff that they don't want to do. I think it's ridiculous. I think it's absurd. I think you can bring a lot of other issues into this debate. And at the end of the day, we need leaders who are going to stand up for the constituents, people who are going to stand up for the Constitution, and make sure that, like I said before, my number one goal is shrinking the size and scope of federal government. I think this is a perfect example of how that size and scope of federal government has grown ridiculously, and we need people that are going to go out there and fight tooth and nail. It's a slippery slope, and we have to stop it.
I believe that it's an attack on our religious freedom. I'm Catholic. The teaching of my church is pro-life, no exceptions. I'm pro-life, no exceptions. The government trying to force me to fund contraception when it goes against our religious beliefs is unconstitutional, in my opinion. As we talked about Friday night, I'm very proud to accept the endorsement from Paul Caprio, the Executive Director of Federal Family PAC, the most respected pro-life family organization in the state of Illinois. And they did so because of my stance on this issue. And that's something that my church teaches me, and you don't move from. Thank you.
I believe the First Amendment protects our rights from that. And what a lot of people may not know is that twice the Obama administration has gone to the Supreme Court over a case that had to do with the Lutheran religion having the right to fire one of its teachers. And twice the Supreme Court voted 9-0 against what Obama wanted to do. And also with that, even the person, Ginsburg, who's one of the most radical people, even spoke up and said, hey, you know, that's a slippery slope. If you agree with this, then you're opening up to dictating to the Catholic Church. You have to have women, you know, as priests and on and on. And so this is a bad move. It's a slippery slope. And I believe in our Constitution. And I have a contract with people, and you can see it on my website. But one of the issues, I not only work to defend our Constitution, but I will see that it's enforced.
This is a question from the members here. The specific person asks, imposing volunteer term limits on yourself in Congress is admirable, but it won't stop the games that career politicians play in Washington. What type of procedural changes would you work to get passed so being a member of Congress is less lucrative?
Well, it's clear if you look back at the framers of this, our Constitution, the forming of this country, that representing the people of your district was a sacrifice. Can you imagine back in the 1800s going to Washington, D.C. to represent the 12th district? You know what happened? Your neighbors protected your farm, your business, your family. They took care of you while you were gone. You went and served your people, and you came back home and were proud to do so. Political parties, politicians have turned it into a career. a way of life up there. We send school teachers to Washington, D.C., they come back multimillionaires as congressmen. How in the heck do you do that? Public service should be a sacrifice. I am for term limits because we can't let this continue. I'll co-sponsor legislation. I signed the term limit pledge with U.S. term limits. 3 terms, 6 years for a congressman, 2 terms, 12 years for a senator. The Senate is a more deliberate body, and we know Congress appropriates funds and moves the business forward in this country. It's not what I want to do. I'm for a constitutional amendment to balance our budget too, not because we have to do it, because we should be able to do it, but I think it's going to take that to force these elected officials to do the job and have the courage. They don't have the courage up there now. Thank you.
Again, I have a contract with each one of you, and number one is that I do believe in term limits. They're self-imposed term limits. I will not run for more than 4 terms or a total of 8 years, because that's what the President of the United States can have, 8 years. I also waive the benefit of a pension. That's not why I'm going to Washington, D.C. I'm going to go to fight for our country and for our values. And when I'm in Congress, I will fight and put up any bill that will prevent legislators from getting rich off the taxpayer money. But I will lead by example.
Well, I've always been a supporter of term limits. I'm still a supporter of term limits. When I ran for lieutenant governor, I was for term limits. I think we need people that will talk about term limits constantly. You know, I'll gladly vote for term limits. But term limits can just be a talking point, just like any issue can be a talking point. I prefer when people put some thought behind it. Why are you for term limits? What's the impact term limits can have? I can tell you one negative impact term limits could have is if you term limit all the politicians and then all the career staffers out in Washington, D.C. actually suddenly are control of government. They're not accountable to the voters. So I believe not only in term limits for politicians, I believe in term limits for staffers out in Washington, D.C. because they shouldn't be allowed to control the functions of government either. Also, you know, I'm not going to sign each and every pledge that's put in front of me so I can tell people I've signed the pledge. Now, some folks have signed pledges that say House members should be held to 3 terms and senators should be held to 2 terms. Well, let's look at what's going on in Washington, D.C. right now. Who's the serious body in Washington, D.C.? It's the House. They've passed budgets. They've talked about issues. Who has not passed a budget in over 1,100 days? The Senate. What happens if you term limit all the House members to 6 years? You let the senators, who are the debating society, stay out there for 12 years. Suddenly they can stall everything that happens in the House because the House members are going home and the senators get to stay out there. We need people that are going to put thought behind things, not talking points. The other thing you need to support behind, other than term limits for politicians and staffers, is you need to get rid of all the gold-plated benefits that politicians and elected officials vote themselves. Their health care is better than yours. Their insurance is better than yours. Their benefits are better than yours. Their pay is better than yours. You need politicians who can go out there not because it's a career, but because it's a service, and you need to fight back against all of those things if you're really going to change things.
As we discussed last Friday at 9 a.m. down in Carbondale on the WSIU television, this issue came up, and I said I signed the pledge because we got to hold elected officials accountable. We got a corrupt state of Illinois, one governor in prison, the next one on his way. We got insider trading up in Washington, D.C. because of these career politicians. We have to be transparent. And even Jason said, if a bill came up and said, vote on term limits, he'd be for it. Okay? We have got to be transparent. If I ask you for your vote, I need to expose my taxes. I need to expose my positions. I need to tell you everything you want to know about me. Thank you.
Okay, one thing I'd like to do right now is say it's okay to clap and support a position, but no derogatory comments or moaning or anything else, okay? Please. Thank you.
Hey, how are you?
Again, these questions are from those that are here. Here is one. Many Tea Partiers believe that our Bill of Rights is being killed off one by one like lobsters in a pot of boiling water. How do we preserve our freedoms and still keep us safe from terrorism?
How do we protect our freedoms and keep us safe? Ben Franklin made a statement, something like regarding liberty and security, and if you sacrifice liberty for security, then you don't need either. And so I believe that we can do both. I think that we can keep ourselves safe while keeping our freedoms. We need to have some common sense procedures, rather than having the TSA doing pat downs on children, or doing diaper checks on the elderly, or collecting information on the internet. This is wrong. That's not what's going to protect us. We need to look at the Department of Homeland Security. That's grown to about 108 different committees, and they've gotten way off track. They're more like a police organization. And the original purpose of that was to be able to pull together the intelligence agencies to be able to communicate with each other. So I believe they need to be audited, and we need to put more common sense solutions in place to protect us while we don't lose our liberties.
I appreciate the question. Like I said before, I'm an intelligence officer in the Navy Reserves, and it's a very dangerous world out there. And a lot of folks think, well, we've ramped down in Iraq, we're ramping down in Afghanistan. The stuff in Syria doesn't impact us. And these things do impact us. If people think that there aren't foreign agents across the world that are sponsored by both governments and terrorist organizations, they're just wrong. So there's a very fine balance between protecting our Bill of Rights, which is near and dear to me, and also protecting our lives. And I think Teresa's correct. I mean, you can't sacrifice one for the other and expect both to be there for very long. I think you need folks that understand the Constitution. I've been hitting on the Constitution a few times here. The Constitution's a phenomenal document. The fact that it's lasted as long as it has in this ever-evolving world I think, both shows the brilliance of our founding fathers, but also the importance of the document. So, before we do anything in the sake of defending our freedom, in the sake of protecting our liberties and our rights and our lives, I think we need to make sure, is it constitutional? And if something doesn't pass constitutional muster, I'm sorry, no matter how good it sounds, it's not constitutional. That's the law of the land. So I think that's first and foremost. The other thing I'd hit on is I think we're talking probably about terrorists and eavesdropping and search and seizure and a lot of stuff like that. But don't forget there's other things that we're sacrificing our freedom on. And if we don't go out there and seriously tackle this budget, we will lose our freedom. If we don't go out there and tackle things like Obamacare, and if we don't go out there and tackle about these overburdensome regulations and bureaucracies, we're quietly losing our freedom one step at a time. So there's multiple issues out there. We have to tackle them all.
Back on 9/11, when our country was attacked by terrorists, we know what Congress did. They legislated the Patriot Act, that some people think stepped on some of our constitutional rights. But Congress said that every 2 years they'll take a look at it. I don't believe they have really done anything with that. It's a fine line when you're trying to protect and serve the people, if it's city government, if it's state government, or at the federal level. It's a fine line. They know things that we don't know. I can tell you, as a mayor, I knew all the intelligence information from the police chief. As a detective, I knew all the intelligence. There's things that we released to the city residents to protect them, but there were things we kept away from them to protect them. And I assure you, we live in the most dangerous time of my life. I'm 55 years old. I can assure you, I'm more concerned with the protection and the defense of our country today than I have ever been in my life with terrorism and the threats abroad. And so it's a tough issue. We always protect our constitutional rights, but you have to realize that it is a tough job in law enforcement on the federal level, state level, and local level to protect us, but also protect our rights. And they do the best they can.
Okay. Hey, you got to be smarter than the microphone. Obviously, I'm not. First thing, I do know I owe you 30 seconds, Jason. We'll get to that later for the rebuttal on the other. That was my mistake. But right now, I'm going to go to this question here from John Rosenbaum, also a Metro East PACCARE member. Higher education has become a profitable business, but there is no promise of a job once the graduate obtains a degree. As the cost of college tuition rises, many think the solution to reduce the massive debts young people are accumulating is low-interest loans. What new and innovative solutions do you have to lower the cost of college tuition and or help students keep their debt from becoming a long-term financial nightmare?
Great question. There's a lot there, so let me try to hit a few things. First and foremost, you have to look at the cost. And why has the cost of college education gone up so dramatically? And I think it's because, to a lot of people, education can become a sacred cow. People aren't willing to really talk about seriousness. Well, if you look at the American education system, I don't care if it's K through 8, if it's 9th grade through 12th grade, or if it's college, it has constantly grown by double digits for the last multiple decades. If you look at the cost compared to the actual academic performance of our students, there's no correlation there. We're spending more and more money, and we've got diminishing results. And I think we're really neglecting our children there. Let's be honest, if you look at the for-profit colleges and universities that exist out there, they're one of the largest industries that donate to Democrats in the country. And then they go out there and they get all the benefits from the for-profit colleges and universities, and then they go out there and the kids that they're killing with debt and poor education, they're trying to bail them out with these low-interest, taxpayer-subsidized loans. And it's absolutely ridiculous. We have to attack these things. We have to attack them constantly. We've got to make sure that we better equip our community colleges to educate our children so that when they graduate, they go out into the world prepared to take on a task, to perform a function. Same with our four-year institutions. We have to have people that understand the importance of education and our performance in this global economy. But the way we're saddling our students with debt, and the Democrat Party benefits from those for-profit colleges and universities, and they try to bail them out with low-interest loans because it's unfortunate what's happened to them. It's ridiculous. We need people that are going to seriously talk about academics and America's role in this global economy.
Well, I tell you one thing, education isn't tough, and somebody like me, I've got my last child in college. She's student teaching over here at West Haven School. She's went to college for 4.5 years because she's doing a double major, one in special ed and one in elementary education. And I can guarantee you one thing, she's not going to have a job after she graduates. It's tough out there in the education area. There's no jobs. Also got a daughter that graduated from Notre Dame University, went to American Catholic University Law School. Can you imagine the bills we got there? For 3 years. Graduated last May. You know where she's at? She doesn't have a job. Graduated from Notre Dame, American Catholic University Law School, magna cum laude. She's over in Rome, taking a special master's course in international law because she couldn't get a job. Now, I don't know about everyone, but I tell you, we sacrificed, the kids sacrificed to get a good education in school, and we don't mind paying our part. We do everything we can, but we got a little student loans each year just to do it. And I was blessed and had a full ride scholarship, or I wouldn't have went to school. This is America. We do the best we can. We help those that can help. And the system that's out there may benefit those that don't have as much as those of us that do, but it works.
There's a lot of different directions I could go with that question, but I'm a big believer in education. I was born into a family, my parents had 8th grade educations. I'm the first person in my family to go to college, and I had to do so on taking out loans, but I made it a point of paying those loans back. I never asked for a bailout, and I did without things so that I could do that. But I did have a job right after I graduated, and that's where we need to focus. We need in Congress to remove the barriers that are in the way of job creation and get down to the business. Let the small business owner, 95% of all jobs are created by the small business owner. We need to get the over-regulations off their backs, lower the taxes. Milton Friedman and Art Laffer, two economists, said that if you lower the taxes, it creates jobs, it widens the tax base, increases revenue. And I believe that we need to do a lot. And I'm a big believer that we need true tax reform to solve a lot of our economy problems. Thank you. And I favor like a flat tax or fair tax system, something that's equitable for everyone across the board, whether it's an individual, family, or business.
This question is a little different than the others. It comes to us as a hypothetical. They say in Washington, D.C., they say that sometimes they say you have to give a little to get along. But that seems like it really means you have to roll over, forget your constituents and principles, or sometimes maybe you have to get your hands a little dirty to get something done. So here's the hypothetical. If Congress continues to remain divided on key issues, as it seems is likely, how are you going to get any kind of meaningful legislation through without sacrificing your principles, or as it were, getting your hands a little dirty?
I think we can go back to my history as mayor of Belleville when I ran and beat the Democratic machine in St. Clair County in Belleville in 1993. I was elected we have 16 aldermen in the city of Belleville. All 16 of them were with the Democratic Machine's Good Government Party. I brought 4 in with me, 12 to 4. And I had to flip votes to get them to go along with eliminating insurance for all 16 of them, part-time aldermen that had full-time insurance. But guess what? I was able to flip them, and it was 8-8, and I broke the tie. When I said I wanted to reduce the city attorney's salary from a billable to a flat rate from $130 that Bob Sprague, the St. Clair County chairman, made, to my city attorney making $62,500, I had to flip them and get them over. Got an 8-8, I broke the tie. It's leadership, courage. It's telling the people, representing the people of Belleville and doing what you say you're going to do. And here in the 12th district, we have values, we have principles, we have needs. And it's going to Washington, D.C. to represent our district and fight for those and get up and lead. I wasn't voted the captain of my football team at Illinois State University because I was a great football player. It's because I was a hard worker and I had character and they could count on me. That's what we need up in Washington, D.C.
I never roll over and I don't heel either. My dogs aren't very well trained either in that regard. But throughout my 34 years of healthcare experience in all aspects of healthcare, my forte has always been to bring people together to work for a common good. And that's what it takes. I've always been able to lead people, bring them together, even when they didn't want to. And I've done that not only on a state level, but a national and international level. I turned over a federal program I was responsible for. In 1 year, I created the best health promotion program of the United States Air Force worldwide, and I did that on a shoestring budget. Imagine being able to do that in Congress. I also developed, in a large medical center, when money was being not appropriately tracked, I was able to implement a tracking system, and we found that lost money, so my system was successful. That's what we need to do in Washington, D.C. to rein in the overspending. But again, my forte has always been to work well with people from all different backgrounds. I'm a psychiatric nurse. That's what I do. I work with difficult people in difficult times, and I bring them together to solve problems.
Well, I think there's a few things. First and foremost, you obviously have to be a principled person. You also have to understand how Washington, D.C. works. You know, I think you can take a perfect example of somebody like that being Paul Ryan. You know, he spent time in Washington, D.C. working, went back home. He's back as a congressman. He's really advanced the ball on a lot of agenda items that I think are great. He's done it getting bipartisan support. Senator Wyden, a Democrat from Oregon, is getting, you know, beat up very bad by his own party because him and Paul Ryan are talking together about how to legitimately solve the problems that voters are facing. You know, it's not about, these problems we're facing, they're not Democrat problems, they're not Republican problems, they're American problems. And you have to work together. And you know, look at my background. I mean, Madison County Republican Chairman, Madison County, Illinois. I mean, it's pretty tough. If we're going to advance the ball, if we're going to fight on property taxes, if we're going to fight on a lot of these important issues, you got to work with Democrats. But you can work with Democrats without sacrificing your principles. There's a lot of people that have done it. You know, and then you also have to take on your own party. You know, when I was out there in '05, I was not fighting with the Heritage Foundation. I was not fighting the Democrats. I was fighting the Republicans. When I ran for lieutenant governor, I ran against the Republican establishment because they wanted to jam 2 City of Chicago, Cook County Republicans for governor and lieutenant governor down our throats. Southern Illinois was not going to be represented, and we weren't going to advance the ball on a lot of important agenda items. So I think you need someone, first, that understands how the system works. It's not talking points, it's understanding how it works. You need to send someone out there with character, with the background of actually taking on the Democrat Party and the Republican Party, and then you need someone that's right on the issues. You get those 3 things, send them to Washington, D.C., you're going to have change, just like the freshmen that are out there now are making change.
Chief Justice John Marshall said the power to tax is the power to destroy. So this is going to be a tax question. I happen to have a degree in accounting from St. Louis U. But number one, the Bush tax cuts are going to, January 1st of 2013, expire. And what are you going to do? Well, when that happens, and then how would you change the tax code? Another question that goes along with this is the stimulus bill has not worked. What would you do to stimulate the economy? And taxes are, or lack of taxes is one of the ideas. And so your answer on that issue.
Those are a lot of questions in one. I hope I get the first one. Start again with the first one.
Is taxes. What would you do with the tax code?
Oh, when things expire, January 1st, I think was the question. Well, the first day in session, I'm going to work with others to extend the Bush tax cuts. We need to do that. Also, we need to put a hold on the cuts that are going to affect our defense system. And I also, as I had said earlier, I believe we need true tax reform in order to change our problems here. I personally favor a flat tax. I know that other people favor a fair tax system. I would want to see the Congressional Budget Office run the numbers on both of those. I'm a numbers person because I work in research. And I want to be able to compare the different tax changes. What's best for our country and what's best for the taxpayer.
Well, I think we need to send people to Washington, D.C. and to Springfield and to local county seat communities as well, for that matter, that really understand how poor public policy impacts the economy, how it impacts workers, how it impacts companies and jobs. I think one of those biggest variables is the tax code. I think the tax code is a train wreck. You know, I've been an ardent opponent to the way our tax code is structured right now. But we also have to understand how the changes to the tax code that we speak of will change tax revenues, how it will change what's going on in Washington, D.C., how it will affect the budget. And I don't care if you're a Democrat or Republican, I don't care. And we read the same history books. Right? I mean, when Kennedy cut taxes, it increased revenue to Washington, D.C. When Reagan cut taxes, it increased revenue to Washington, D.C. When we increase taxes, like we're doing in Illinois right now, we're going to see a short-term bump in revenue for 2 years probably, and then you'll start to see that revenue drag off because more people are leaving the economy. Businesses are shutting down, people are losing their jobs, people are going to other states. You actually impact the economy and tax receipts. So we have to reform the tax code. I was not a supporter of Jon Huntsman for president, but I would encourage everyone out there to Google the Wall Street Journal, Jon Huntsman's tax plan. I thought it was brilliant. It was great. We need people to get out there and talk about ways to really change the system. You need a flatter tax code. You need a more transparent, more fair tax code that's easily understandable. You need to get rid of the loopholes that wealthy people and large companies can take advantage of, that all of us have to shoulder the burden for. And finally, I think we need to look at a more consumption-based tax code as well. So there's a lot of ways to do it, and we need to send people out there that will do it.
I believe straightening out our financial situation in this country is just common sense solution. It's history. I've mentioned it for the last 6-7 months. What John F. Kennedy did in 1963 with this country in recession, a Democrat, what did he do to get the economy going? He cut taxes across the board. He cut the top bracket 20%. We're bringing in $95 billion to the U.S. Treasury in income taxes in 1963. With the Kennedy tax cut still in place in 68, we're bringing in $153 billion. You can't tax your way out of this debt, but you can free up, put the people back to work, and that's exactly what happened under JFK, a Democrat. If he was alive today, he'd be a fiscal conservative. Who did it next? Ronald Reagan after the Jimmy Carter malaise. We need to do the same thing today. I am also a fan of the flat tax, 15% tax, flat tax, no deductions. We're done with the code. You make $100,000, $15,000. 1,000,000, 150,000. Guess what? We end class warfare that Obama's putting on our job creators. We're all rooting for that guy to make more money now, aren't we? Because the more he makes, the more he pays in. There's no deductions. We don't have no General Electric, a Jeffrey Immelt, the buddy of Obama, having the hugest corporate year ever, and not paying a penny in taxes. So common sense, get politics out, send the people that are going to make the tough decisions that have the courage.
Now that he's helped me with the microphone, I think I might be able to get it right this time. From Bob White, Metro East Packer member, do you favor the enumerated powers clause in our Constitution? And if Congress does follow their duties, how do you think that would affect the future of budgetary actions? And then for those people like me that don't exactly understand the enumerated powers, I happen to go on the website. I'm going to read it to you just so everybody starts from the same point. Enumerated powers are powers given to the federal government by the terms of the U.S. Constitution. The question whether the Constitution all should be understood or given under Article 2 of the Articles of Confederation, the Confederation Congress's powers were limited to those explicitly granted by that document. This limitation on the federal legislative powers, when coupled with the extreme difficulty of changing a constitution whose amendments require the unanimous agreement of the 13 states, stymied several nationalist initiatives in the period before the adoption of the Constitution. So, having said that, do you favor the enumerated powers clause in our Constitution? And if Congress does follow their duties, how do you think that would affect the future of budgetary actions?
Yes to the first part. And whether you agree with it or you don't agree with it, it's in the Constitution. It's in the Constitution, you know, and it's beyond me, you know. The other thing that I would say is that, you know, one big beef I have with the current administration and their liberal allies is that it almost is like the Constitution doesn't matter. You know, they don't try to change the Constitution if they don't agree with it. They just ignore it. They go around it. They create czars. They create these bureaucracies that aren't accountable to the people. It's absolutely ridiculous, and that's why I keep talking about the Constitution. We have to send people out there that understand the Constitution, understand each and every bit of it, and how it can impact what's going on. The second thing is we have to look at federal power, state power, of course. We have to look at will that improve our fiscal situation right now? Absolutely, absolutely. We've got to shift away from the way things are being done right now. We've got to make sure that the folks are more accountable to the people that send them there. And the way you do that is making sure, I tell people all the time, you know, everyone wants to talk about congressional races and U.S. Senate races and governor races. One of the biggest, you know, city council races are big. School board races are big. These local things matter because these people have probably, to be honest with you, a greater impact on your day-to-day life than your U.S. congressman. These things absolutely matter. And we've got to make sure that power shifts away from Washington, D.C. and down to the local level where it impacts people at a greater level and people have greater control over what's going on.
Yes, I do support it, and I think it's clear to make a distinction that states have powers, people have rights. And when the federal government starts taking the rights away from the people, then that's where we have to stand up and fight back. A clear example of that is the Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, that I think is unconstitutional, and they're trying to force it on us in every state. That's why we have all the attorney generals suing, and we're going to be going to Supreme Court to throw out Obamacare. I gave my job up September 30th of this year to take on Jerry Costello and his $2.5 million. Because nobody else I thought that could win had got in or had the courage to do so. Guess what? I gave my job up, I lost my insurance. I have a choice. I'm not making no money. I can't pay $580 a COBRA. So I went without insurance for the first 2 months. And then my wife finally talked me into buying major medical. But that's my choice. I took the risk. I did a full physical. I said I'm healthy. The United States government can't come down and take the rights away from the people that are in the Constitution, and we'll fight for that.
I support, defend, and will enforce our Constitution. And if we follow our Constitution, it would greatly reduce the size of government, the federal government. And I believe in auditing the federal government. When was that ever done? I mean, the IRS can audit us at any time, so we should be able to audit the federal government. Remember the old adage, I'm from the government and I'm here to help? Well, I think when I go to Congress, I'll say, I'm here from the people, and I'm here to see what the heck you're doing.
This is a local question about Mid-America Airport. The main question is just what can be done to save taxpayer money? The joint use airport at Scott has been widely criticized as a pork barrel project. A lot of us know executives there receive large salaries to run an airport that has never had service from a major airline. Mid-America has not had any passenger service in years, and yet the executives there earn very substantial salaries. On the other hand, keeping the airport open seems to be crucial to the long-care health of Scott that we referenced earlier. So how should we balance fiscal responsibility with local jobs?
Well, and I can assure you that we all got our opinion. We'd love to see Scott, our Mid-America Airport, gone. And you know, it's a drain on the county budget. Everybody that lives in St. Clair County is paying higher taxes on their homes because of Mid-America Airport. It doesn't seem to have any end to it. But what's unfortunate, I always thought, well, maybe we could just gift it back to the military, give it to Scott Air Force Base, make Scott Air Force Base stronger. They got the longer runway, they got the terminal. But honestly, I've asked out on the stump members of the military, and they say Scott Air Force Base doesn't want it. It just costs them more to maintain it, and they'd have to spend the money that they don't have. And so I said, you telling me that that airport and that runway is not a benefit to Scott Air Force Base? So it's a tough situation. I don't know what they can do, but I do know that St. Clair County's got bonds out there that they owe. And that's what you always see the chairman spout in the paper, that they can't do it. They owe it. If they don't, they have to pay the U.S. government so much money. So I would look at any way to get out from underneath that, because unfortunately, it's a big drain on the local economy.
As I said earlier, I believe Mid-America Airport can be used to expand the mission of Scott Air Force Base. We've got all that space out there. And I will be working to expand the mission of Scott Air Force Base. Like I said earlier, we're living in serious times. We need to further develop our protect and defense policies. We need to look at things other than just nuclear. We need to look at cyber warfare and how we can protect not only our defense, but our financial institutions and our power grids. So there's a role in expanding there. There's electromagnetic pulses, which I know if you read any of my scientific papers, I know something about that. And we need to develop shielding for protection of all our electronic systems. So I would sell Mid-America to the Department of Defense and use it for the expanding role of Scott Air Force Base.
Well, I can tell you the first thing, if you really want to solve the Mid-America problem, and it is a boondoggle, is you get rid of the people that created the problem. You vote for people like John McClain. You vote for people like, you vote for the local Republicans if you want to get rid of it. You vote for the local Republicans. I mean, it's like, who are some of the biggest creators of this financial crisis? Barney Frank and Chris Dodd. And who do the Democrats say, hey, you know what? We've got the Dodd-Frank bill that's going to solve the problems that Dodd-Frank created. It's ridiculous. Mark Kern's not going to solve Mid-America. He's the one that created it. I mean, just the other day in the Belleville News Democrat, $550 million in new bonds. And then did you read it? Some mysterious guy from St. Louis that he's a hotel consultant, and the quote in the paper was, well, if you give me the money first, then I'll tell you how I'm going to do it. And these people vote for this? I mean, you get rid of the local folks that have created the problem. You vote for the local Republicans. Look, Mid-America's here. You're not going to wipe away the last 15 years. It's here. We got to figure out how to utilize it. I think, obviously, the end game to that will have something to do with Scott Air Force Base. As your congressman, I said I'm going to fight to make sure we expand the mission of Scott Air Force Base. Mid-America will probably end up playing a role in that. But it goes back to what I always say. People say, why are you running for this race? I said, this race isn't about me getting elected to Congress. This is about changing dynamics of the 12th Congressional District. And I'm going to run a hard campaign campaign, I'm going to run a great campaign, I'm going to work really hard, and I'm going to make sure I win on March 20th, and then I'm going to make sure in November when I win, it's not just Jason Plummer won a congressional seat going to Washington, D.C. Up and down the ballot, we're going to elect conservative Republicans that are going to have an impact on the local area, and Mid-America and the local folks here in St. Clair County are an example.
Good time, Jason. We're going to take a 5-minute break for everybody to stretch. Think of it as the 7th inning. Take a break, relax, and we'll be back when my phone goes off at 5 minutes. About 30 seconds and we'll start back up. Okay, if everybody could grab their seats, please. Going once. Going twice. Okay, and we'll continue with Mr. Federers.
We have an SEIU and a ACORN, SIUE, an ACORN question. This is hypothetical. Today, public service unions are partners with our public officials. When the union wants a raise or more health insurance, our elected officials oftentimes raise our taxes instead of asking the unions to put more money in or reconsider their demands. If SIUE is unwilling to back down on their demands during contract negotiations, what would you do? And a very similar question along with that says, if the SIUE goes on strike and there's ACORN and their sympathizers, well, what will you do as a Republican congressman? And if you want to just address the SEIU ACORN issue however you like. Thank you.
Yeah, there's a lot in that question, but that's a hypothetical that you're asking about. And first, I think that that's a state's issue to begin with, but they do receive federal money, and it needs to be dealt with on a local level and state level. At that point, if it's still not being able to be solved, then the governor would have to ask the federal to get involved. The federal just can't jump in there. But I would see that that would be taken care of. They send in a federal arbitrator at that point.
Well, I think first, let's differentiate between SEIU and ACORN. SEIU is a public union. ACORN is a organization of community activists, and there's a lot of ACORNs out there. So as a congressman, I can and I will vote to make sure we defund organizations like that, and our taxpayer money don't go to organizations like ACORN. Regarding SEIU, it's different. And as a those negotiations are going on at the county level, the state level, the federal level, different layers of government workers and other types of workers. So as a congressman, I'm not sitting across the negotiating table from them. However, there is something that voters can do. You'd be shocked at the number of Republican union members that come up to me and say, hey, we're getting attacked because of benefits we get and because of, those types of things. But those are negotiated deals. Don't have the beef with the union members, have the beef with the elected officials that gave them all that stuff because they're hoping to get their votes. So as voters, we need to make sure, that's why those city council and those local elections matter. Those people do a lot with your taxpayer money. They have a huge impact on your lives. So as voters, we need to make sure that we impact public unions in that manner. But as your congressman, those other organizations that aren't unions, that are these radical community activist groups, ACORN and the whole lot of them, absolutely, I'll vote to defund them. I'll vote to defund them constantly. And we need to stay on top of that because those organizations are ridiculous.
Let me begin with Acorn. We all know that Acorn is a left-wing liberal organization. We've seen what they did to vote fraud and registering. Totally defund them, push them out. Organizations like Planned Parenthood who stand for things that I don't. I wouldn't fund them either. Let's go into the bargaining units, the unions, the Teamsters, the laborers, SEIU, the clerical Teamsters, and we can go on. The police union, the FOP, the firefighters. Well, guess what? I was one of them. I was the head of our bargaining unit when I was a young cop. City of Belleville, the mayor wouldn't sit across the table and negotiate. The city attorney, Bob Sprague, would not. We'd go 3 years without a contract. They hired a big old Chicago union busting or Collinsville, Illinois union busting attorney. Sit across the table, wouldn't bargain in good faith. When I ran for mayor, I said I would sit across the table, negotiate. I'd have 2 CPAs that are on the city council, one on the other side, one on my team. I'd have the director of finance, and I'd have the department head. I negotiated every contract across the table on time, in good faith, represented the people of Belleville, our taxpayers, and the interest of our city, and balanced that with fairness and true negotiations. You know, if you want to be successful in business, you better treat your people that work for you right. If you do, they're going to work hard for you. You're going to be successful. I did that, and it hasn't been done since in the city of Belleville. The union bosses supported the other side again. They sold out their workers. Thank you.
I'm always afraid with the microphone. This question came from Jeffrey Pitts, Caseyville Republican. In 1973, the U.S. dropped the gold standard because our currency was so strong worldwide. Since then, our spendthrift politicians have turned us into debtors, and so our dollar buys less. This means the prices for cotton, sugar, coffee, and oil have skyrocketed. Do you feel it is time to tie our monetary system to a commodity such as gold or silver again, or let me say that again. Do you feel it is time we tie our monetary system to a commodity such as gold or silver again to slow down runaway inflation?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think gold is the answer. You know, I know there's talk of some other commodities out there, but I think gold's the answer. You know, when President Nixon took the U.S. dollar off the gold standard, I think that was a real calamity for our economy and for our country. I think it should go back to that. I think that tying the dollar to gold is great in my mind, but that's not the end of it. I think that the currency manipulation that we see, I think that some of the things that the Fed does that we see, it is ridiculous. I think things do need to be audited. I'm kind of frustrated how issues like this that are hugely important and hugely impact our lives are completely neglected. And Ron Paul talks about some of this stuff every once in a while. There aren't many people other than Ron Paul that talk about things like the gold standard. And when Ron Paul talks about the gold standard and stuff and spending and some things like that, he's right on. He's right on those things. And I think we need to be talking about things like tying the dollar back to the gold standard, ending the currency manipulation that occurs in the Fed, and instead of talking about contraceptives right now. These are very important things, and that's what I stand for. And I'd love to have the opportunity to be a part of tying the U.S. dollar back to a commodity like gold.
We're all fed up with the devaluation of the American dollar. You see where the Fed QE2, quantitative easing, they're just printing money, throwing money out in the market, and when they do that, so you can't print money and not lower the value of the dollar. I'll be honest with you. You know, I don't know the exact answer, but you know what? There's people out there in this country. There's people up in Washington, D.C. There's economists. There's experts, and those are the type of people that I will engage with and listen to. I would be foolish to tell you I have the answer to that, or have all the answers to every question. But you know what? You surround yourself with good people, people that are experts in their field. Listen to them, and you'll be successful. And that's what I intend to do. Go up to Washington, D.C. and stand right next to a Paul Ryan, someone that I think is a leader and that has plans to balance our budget out in the future. So it's about making decisions after you get the information. To stand here and tell you that gold's the way to go, do it with corn, it'd be foolish. But there are plans, and I will work with people to move forward.
Yeah, I agree. This is a complicated issue, and you can have all kinds of different ideas, even within the Republican Party. Jason and I usually agree on the same thing, but I've had just a little bit different take on it. But it's one of those areas that, you know, we have dialogue with each other and we learn. I think going to the gold standard, I think history has showed us that that would be the worst things to do. The Federal Reserve, why I agree that there needs to be more transparency, I think at the same time the Federal Reserve has kept the interest rates low to keep the dollar more stable. If the economy turns around and improves, then we're going to have to work with the Federal Reserve to increase the interest rate so we don't see the hyperinflation. But I want to point to the example of Greece. You know, part of Greece's problem, they were locked into the euro. They couldn't, you know, inflate or deflate their currency, and that's one of the things that created a problem. But again, this is an area that there is no direct answer to, and we need more dialogue.
Before we started, I said to John that, and I just want to say this, I was really impressed with the quality of the candidates that we have for this office. You've been at this. You've been at this for months, and you've had an opportunity that a lot of us haven't had to meet a lot of people in the district and to see the district in a way that a lot of us haven't. So can you tell us what's your picture of the district? What have you learned? What do you see as the major assets of the district? What are its challenges? And what can a congressional representative do to improve the lives of the citizens of the 12th district?
Well, that's a great question for me. I've lived, worked, raised a family, paid taxes in the 12th Congressional District all my life. Mayor of the largest city in the 12th Congressional District. I've done homicide investigations in Madison, Monroe, and St. Clair counties, the northern part of the district, the largest 3 counties in the district. For the past 15 years, I've worked in Cairo, Anna, Jonesboro, Murfreesboro, Carbondale, DuQuoin, Pinckneyville, Sparta, Chester, Mount Vernon, Carterville, Marion. Every city in this district. I've worked in the financial industry. I know it from the top to bottom. You know, there's not a whole lot of difference from the people down in Anna and Jonesboro to the people up in Bethalto and the Alton area. Conservative values, Christian people, fiscal conservatives. We've got unbelievable resources. One of the things we haven't talked about is coal. We need to mine our coal. We need to get the EPA out of the way to delve into those resources. We need to have a comprehensive energy policy that says drill for oil, drill for natural gas, drill on our land up in Anwar, where it's safer and cheaper to drill on land. We got the clean coal technology. We can put our people back to work, get off the foreign oil, the people that are a danger to us and our defense. So, thank you.
Yeah, we have the best hometown businesses, manufacturers, we have natural resources, and we need to do on the congressional level everything that we can do to see that those businesses flourish and bring in new businesses, as well as mine our natural resources like coal. And we can, there's talk of fracking in Franklin County. Try to say that 6 times fast, fracking in Franklin County. But, you know, I released earlier this week a jobs plan for every county, and you can look at that on my website. And then we also have the rivers, but we do need to get the overregulation off the back, so it's going to kill businesses like Continental Tires and Walgreens in Jefferson County, the boat manufacturer in Franklin County, Total Titanium in Randolph County. we need to, like I said, get the federal government out of the way with the overregulation, get the EPA regulation away from them, and let people do their jobs and getting business going. And like I said, we have great businesses, and we can just see our district flourish even further.
Going back to the last question real fast, gold standard, I encourage people to read about what Steve Forbes has written on the issue and other economic issues. I think you'd find it very interesting. Regarding the assets of the 12th Congressional District, I've been saying for a long time, I don't think there's a part of the country that's as blessed as Southern Illinois. If you look at our access to natural resources, coal, oil, natural gas, agricultural products, if you look at our access to transportation networks, road, rail, river, air, if you look at our hardworking workforce, our access to institutions of higher education, we are blessed. We're phenomenally blessed. But we're struggling economically. But why are we struggling economically? It's not because of a poor workforce. It's not because of a lack of natural resources. It's because of poor public policy. And we need someone that understands how public policy impacts these things. The EPA, for example, they want to make, if you're 14 or 15 years old, the EPA doesn't think you should be working on your family farm. They want to regulate how much dust your tractor kicks up when you work in the field. It's absolutely ridiculous. 20 years ago in the 12th Congressional District, we had 37 operating coal mines. Today we have 9. We have not run out of coal in Southern Illinois. Trust me, we need to get the bureaucracies and these regulations out of the way and let the American people do what they do best. And we've got some of the best people in the 12th Congressional District. The other thing I would argue, what I can do, is it's not, we're talking about the economy and money, but what about our values? I'm a Christian, I'm conservative. This is a culturally conservative area, and we need to send someone to Washington, D.C. that's not going to vote for Nancy Pelosi to be Speaker of the House. That's going to make sure we've got a conservative as Speaker of the House. And then finally, I look, how can you impact this area? Vote for me. I won this area in 2010 by 8 or 9 points. Okay? Vote for other good conservatives up and down the ballot. We'll change this area.
This is a question from myself. The Muslim Brotherhood has a goal of taking over the world and establishing a caliphate, a one world government run by the Sharia Muslim. And they are taking over Egypt, they're taking over Libya through the democratic process, and they threaten democratic forms of government wherever they go. What would you do to help to protect America from Sharia law and Muslim Brotherhood people?
Our Constitution already protects us from that, especially our First Amendment right. So there's no room to be...
Well, no, the First Amendment has to do with religion, so this is just a political system, the political system to take over with Sharia law.
Well, Sharia law, they cannot separate their religion and their political views. They're one and the same. And so our First Amendment right does cover that, and our Constitution protects us from that.
I would say the first thing we do is we make sure that we elect conservative Republicans. And why do I say that? Look at our foreign policy right now. I think we have a very bipolar foreign policy right now. Let's take Hosni Mubarak, for example, in Egypt, right? I don't think there's anybody in here that says, Hosni Mubarak was a great guy, I want him to be my next door neighbor. But Hosni Mubarak was a strong ally of the United States. He was a strong ally of Israel. He did a lot of good things for us. And when there started to be issues in Egypt, I would say our president essentially threw Hosni Mubarak under the bus, and now we have the Muslim Brotherhood taking over Egypt. I would argue not even through the democratic process. It's through manipulation. They've got the guns, they've got the power, they're going to have the government, okay? If you look at what's going on in Syria now, you've got Assad, who is not a friend of the United States, whose government is responsible for the deaths of a lot of Americans, who's butchering his own people right now, as Hosni Mubarak did not do in Egypt when there's protests. And we're not doing anything about it. Essentially, we have to have strong leaders that are going to be friends to our friends and stand up to our enemies. And right now, we've thrown a few of our friends under the bus, and that frustrates me. I understand how these folks get toeholds in government. I understand how they manipulate foreign powers and whatnot. And we have to have people out there that truly understand this. Iran's not a talking point. Iran is a serious threat to the United States of America. Syria is not something you watch on Fox News. Syria has implications on what happens in America. And you need to send people to Washington, D.C. that understand these things and understand not just what they read on CNN, but how these things impact us and our security.
As I mentioned earlier, we're in a very serious time, in my opinion, on the threats to this country. the Taliban, the Al-Qaeda, the terrorists that would just like to slit our throats, Sharia law. You know, we couldn't all stand up more opposed to anything like that in the country. It takes about every right away from a woman. It's un-American, and I'll tell you, the President of the United States, the Commander-in-Chief, has got to be the leader when we fight and protect us and protect this country. And we do have problems in how we're viewed now as being weak or strong, and what are we going to do and stand up. We've got to send strong, courageous leaders to Washington, D.C. to make the tough decision. Because let me tell you, we can talk all we want about jobs, and we can talk all we want about balancing the budget and about oil, drilling for oil. But if we lose our freedom, we have absolutely nothing. And you know, if you look back in the future, the great empires in the world, what happened? They eat themselves from within, didn't they? That's what's happening here. We got the political system, the political parties. We send people up because it's their turn in the party. We better knock it off. If you want to save this country and you care about your kids and your grandchildren, you better send the people to Washington, D.C. that have the background, that have achieved, that have been in the battles, that have beat the Democratic Party, that balance budgets, multi-million-dollar budgets, that's done what they said, and not join the club. Thank you.
Okay, I have a hypothetical problem-solving one. The United Nations demands we will share all our technologies for oil drilling and refining, as well as our oil profits with certain poor countries. The U.S. State Department is on board with this plan and has negotiated many agreements which will force oil companies to comply because their drilling permits are being held hostage by the Obama administration. Knowing this is happening now, how would you stop this?
Well, I'm one of those people that already is kind of sick and tired of the UN and its dictates. I would say, by the time this has happened, I probably would have already cast a vote to defund. Is this one? Okay. I would have probably already cast a vote to defund the UN. And I think once we get to a position like that, clearly the presidential candidate, the Republican presidential candidate, did not win. And we've got a whole lot of problems. I think that we fund the UN, and the UN just turns around and slaps us in the face constantly. Proprietary information of an American individual, of an American corporation, is American. It's theirs. They own it. And if the UN is forcing American companies to show confidential information, and if our government is on board and holding hostage drilling permits or whatever it may be, I think clearly we've got huge problems. So, I mean, one congressman isn't going to stop something like that, but I think that's one reason why it's important that we send someone to Washington, D.C. from the 12th Congressional District that hasn't in the past been on board with mandating its citizens to do stuff, that hasn't in the past been on board with giving away proprietary information of its constituents and of its local companies, and that's something that I obviously wouldn't do, and that's something that I would fight tooth and nail for. And if you elect me, and if you elect other good conservatives, I don't see that hypothetical becoming reality, but if it does become reality, we've got huge problems, and that's why this election cycle is too important.
I'm fed up with the other countries or the UN or any other organization telling us what we should and should not do, especially our private sector. We're broke. This country is going bankrupt. If we don't take serious action, if we don't have an historic election here in 2012, we're going to be like Greece. I mean, every economist says that. And we've got to take a stand now. And do we have the money to give Pakistan, who's helped terrorists, we still give them millions of dollars every year? We've got to look at all that. We've got to take a stand against those people that are truly our friends and those people that need money for humanitarian reasons. But the United States of America stands alone. We make the decisions right here in this country that's going to affect our future, and never let the UN or anyone else around the world tell us what to do.
I believe we're a sovereign nation, and I would fight United Nations or any kind of foreign bodies that would make us, under their laws. I've always questioned how viable the United Nations still is. It's 193 members, and most of them usually vote against U.S. interests. I don't know if they're as effective as they should be. They've grown too big, and they've kind of grown past their original purpose. I think we need to build new alliances. I think we need people in Washington and a president that's going to have stronger foreign policy than what we have now. And so, again, I think that we all, like most people, conservatives, that we would fight against that and fight for our Constitution.
This is a question about two pieces of paper that some people think might be needed for this position. The background is some other people who've tried to get positions in the White House when asked if they had a current passport. There's that question. And also in the Clinton administration, some staffers were unable to get a security clearance. So one question is, do you have a current passport, and do you think that's something that someone who's in Congress should have? And second question, have you ever had a job where you had a high security clearance, and do you think that's something that someone in Congress should have?
Yes, yes, and yes. I have a passport. I've had to have a background check, not only for a police officer, it's a full background and polygraph. I also went through the Secret Service. I protected George Bush, President, the #1, whichever one that is. So when he came to Belleville, I was on the detail, so that was top clearance. So yeah, absolutely. I support those issues.
Yes, I have a passport and lived in Germany for 3 years since my husband was prior military. I also had a great opportunity to work at Rhein-Main Air Force Base in their medical facility, and I had to undergo a security clearance for that. And I'm also a licensed medical professional, and we're also held to a higher standard. Every time it's time to renew our license, we're asked a series of questions, and we have to comply with answering it. We also, anytime like I apply for privileges at a hospital, we go through a background check. So I've been checked out over and over again, and will also be continued to do so. And also people in the medical profession were also held to a higher standard ethically. It's not just breaking a law. If we did something that was questionable ethically, we could lose our license for it as well.
Well, I'm an intelligence officer in the Navy Reserve, so I have high security clearance already. I see and hear and know a lot of things, so I've definitely been vetted there. But when you're something like an intelligence officer in the Navy Reserves, this isn't. I mean, they vet your finances, they vet your family, they vet your associations, they vet the organizations you belong to. This isn't, something silly. This is very serious stuff. So I obviously think people in important roles of government, elected officials, non-elected officials, staff, everything. Obviously, I think that they should be as vetted as thoroughly as possible. I think it's a very important thing for a lot of folks in a lot of different areas. So there's probably not somebody in this room, I assure you, that's been as vetted as thoroughly as I've been vetted in every way you can possibly be vetted. That being said, I also think that we should also vet at polling stations. How come Jason wants to serve in the Navy and I've got to do all this stuff, but these people that go vote, how come they don't have to? I mean, I've got to show ID to do all these different things. I want to go, I've got really bad allergies, and I have to show my driver's license to get medication and take care of my allergies, and these people are voting on the leaders of our country and they don't have to do anything, especially here in St. Clair County. I think it's ridiculous, and I think that's an issue that people need to take more seriously.
This is one of my questions. President Obama wrote a letter saying that he would make sure that the health care bill would not include abortion, and now we're seeing 2 years later that Catherine Sebelius is actually writing it into the health care where abortion will be covered. And then part of a larger question of him having a track record of trying to get around the limitations of the Constitution. Basically going to war with Libya without even asking Congress, and having a promise that every bill would be online that you could read for 48 hours before it's voted on, and that's never happened. What is your idea, plan to limit this president from going, as he recently said, that he's just going to go it alone without even consulting Congress?
Right, right. Well, it's interesting that the president does have executive power to a certain degree. But I think in Congress, I would do everything possible to keep a check on that, bring things up on the floor, be able to have hearings, go to the public to make him a very unpopular president. Addressing the abortion issue with the healthcare mandate is definitely wrong. I think we touched on that already, that it's against people's religion, so they should not have to pay for an abortion. And the whole health care bill is just wrong. This is something that's near and dear to me since I've worked in healthcare for 34 years, that the Obamacare, just the issue of an abortion is just the tip of the iceberg there. It's created, just in the first 6 months since it's been passed, it created 4,000 pages of just regulations, 170 some panels and committees that's going to dictate everything in our way of life, what our doctor can prescribe, who your doctor will be, what medicines they're allowed to prescribe and what they can't. And so I will fight everything to make sure that we kill Obamacare.
Well, I'm going to hold this president in check and make sure he doesn't go alone by making sure that we defeat this president this year. I think it's not just some of the things you mentioned. I mean, this is a president said he would never have any lobbyists that work for him, and now he's stacked his thing full of lobbyists. This is a president said that he would go with public financing for his election in 2008, and then he broke that. I mean, this is a president that's broken so many pledges. It's absolutely ridiculous. He can't even count them all. And some of the things he does are more trivial, but some of the things he does are very serious. And I think the creation of all these czars, which I alluded to earlier, is a huge constitutional question. And I think it really bothers me. It really frightens me. I think that what we've seen the president do with the health care bill. I mean, let's be honest. Nobody read that health care bill before they voted for it. And this is the president said that the debates were going to be on C-SPAN and everything was going to be posted online. None of that stuff happened. Now, I commend John Boehner and the Republican majority in the House, and they've started to actually put bills online, make sure people have the time to read them. Those are great things, but that's just a small step in the right direction. I think that we absolutely need to send people, like I said, to Washington, D.C., that have been in the trenches for a long time fighting for these things. This isn't something new to me. You were asking about getting vetted in the last question. We elected a president of the United States, the largest enterprise in the world, who was never vetted by the media and was not vetted by his Republican opposition. That can't happen this cycle. And us three up here, if you want to change Washington, D.C., and you send someone out there, make sure you vetted us three pretty thoroughly.
Vetting, release our taxes. Well, I put it all out there. Teresa's put it all out there. You want to vet, you don't expose yourself financially, and that you've done what you said you're going to do. Let's do that. Let's talk about abortion. Let's talk about the Stupak Amendment. Watching C-SPAN live on a weekend where they're jamming Obamacare down our neck. Bart Stupak, who led the Democratic caucus, and he put that amendment in and they voted on it and it lost by 1 vote. Immediately, they went to vote on Obamacare. And Stupak voted for Obamacare with abortion funding in there. Jerry Costello voted for it, and that passed by 1 vote. Jerry Costello sold us out for the party. That's what's wrong with this country. The pressures, the political insiders, selling out the people they represent. When Jerry Costello said he was pro-life, would never do it. We've got to change that. And I've never been so sicker in my life than when I watched that and depressed as an American. And that's the start of me really seriously looking at this. And we have to take a stand and stop inside partisan politics and start representing our people.
This question comes from Joe Beacon. Hey, it's a good question. EPA proposed a maximum achievable control technology, or MACT regulation, that would require power plants to reduce emissions of mercury and other toxins within the next 3 years. Two parts to this question. How would this affect Illinois' coal plants and coal mining? And do you think we need this kind of legislation?
It will decimate them, and no. I was talking about the coal industry earlier, and it obviously is, it's a lifeblood, 12th Congressional District. Further south you move, the more coal you run. I always tell people all the time, I mean, what we do in Southern Illinois with our coal, and if we put more regulations and more burdens and more taxes and more rules on our power plants and on our coal miners and on our coals, we're going to finish off the coal industry of Southern Illinois. I tell people all the time, you know, we've got more BTUs in coal in Southern Illinois than Saudi Arabia has in oil. And what we do to our coal would be the equivalent of the oil sheiks of Saudi Arabia said, hey, we're standing on top of all this oil. Instead of drilling the oil, let's import Southern Illinois coal to power our grid. Do they import Southern Illinois coal, or do they drill? They drill. We should be mining in Southern Illinois. We should be doing everything we can to utilize those resources. And we have an administration, and we have allies of this administration that want to make it more difficult for our industries to grow. I'm not against solar power. I'm not against wind power. I'm not against nuclear power. I'm all for those things. But I know what we've been blessed with. We've been blessed with oil. We've been blessed with natural gas. We've been blessed with coal. We absolutely need to utilize those resources. We need to make it easier for our companies and our plants and our people to use those resources. And even if you're for MACT, and you're for these burdens and all this, right? The coal's going to get used. Is it going to get used by China or America? Who's going to do it better? Who's going to do it more environmentally friendly? We are. Let's take the regulations off and let's get our people back to work.
We have to limit the powers of the EPA, not only in the coal industry, but throughout. We have to take the powers out of their hands. We have the cleanest air, cleanest water in my lifetime by far. We have clean coal technology. Prairie State Energy Complex is right across from our family farm in Lively Grove, Illinois. Do you know what that complex, that multi-billion-dollar complex that's just built, has done to our area? See, in the last 4 years, old little St. Laboria and Sparta and Oakville, Marissa, Fayetteville, we've had a great economy because they brought in 3,000 individuals that work there nonstop 24 hours a day to build a multi-billion-dollar mining operation and power plant. We've had a great 4 years. Now they got permanent jobs up there. But I can tell you, I've met with executives from Prairie State because they're friends. I've gotten to know them over the past 4 years, and they're scared to death of this president and this administration, if he gets 4 more years, that they could shut down that multi-billion-dollar facility that's creating energy and mining coal and putting our people back to work. We have got to get the president out of there. We've got to address EPA and reduce their powers. And because this president is giving all the powers to the liberal left-wing environmental base, we all want clean air and water. We can do it safely because we have the technology.
This regulation has nothing to do with just the environment issues, not only with the coal, but if you read the fine print, it even goes further, that affects like boilers in the hospitals, restaurants. So we all know that this is just a backdoor approach to cap and trade and further regulations on all of us. I think that some solutions to that is we need to rein in the bureaucrats and we need to keep a check on them. I think any major regulation has to have the approval of Congress. I think that we should also have like a committee or an office that oversees this regulation to make sure it keeps the bureaucrats in check. And also there should be sunset dates on all regulations so that they can be reviewed.
A question about reforming Medicaid and welfare benefits. We live at a time when a lot of people rely on federal benefits in these sorts of areas, and when Congress acts on these areas, one thing that comes into play with regard to the media, for example, is the word cuts. Talk of cuts can anger senior citizens, welfare recipients, and others who come to rely on federal payments to support a form of life that they've become used to. So could you explain your position on how we could work for sustainable positions in these areas, but also how you could diffuse media hype, especially when people start talking about cuts that's threatening and fearful to some?
When Paul Ryan came out with his plan to prosperity, what was the first thing that Nancy Pelosi, Harry Reid, President Obama, Jerry Costello did? They sent out letters scaring seniors, said it's going to cost you $6,500 more a year under the Paul Ryan plan. That was a flat-out lie. You know what Paul Ryan's plan that I support, that Marco Rubio supports, says? If you're currently retired on Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, nothing changes. Pretty comforting. You're on a fixed income. If you're close to being retired, 55 and over, nothing changes. Because you've had a contract, you've worked all your life, it's too late to change in the middle of the game for you. But to save it for the current retirees, for people my age and above, and for the younger generations, there's some changes made. They're going to have to work longer. If you made a multi-billion, zillion dollars, guess what? Under the Ryan plan, you don't get Medicare, Medicaid, or Social Security. And you know what? I'm not for taxing the rich more, the job creators. I'm saying God bless them. But if you got so much money you don't need it, this is where we need some help. And his plan addresses that. It doesn't affect the economy, but what it does is it balances our budget out 8 to 10 years down the road, gets on a fiscal path of sustainability. If we don't do something before 2013, we know what's going to happen. Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security are in big trouble.
We all know that these areas need to be reformed in order to remain solvent. With specifics to Medicaid, I think that the federal government needs to cap what they give to states and let the states have the freedom to be able to determine what they need to do for their people. Because you know, the best governments, that's what's closest to the people. As with regard to others, I think that you may be referring to other entitlements, such as Social Security, although most seniors don't view that as an entitlement since they paid into it. We do need to reform that. I think the Social Security was started to be something for insurance to prevent our elderly into going into poverty. And we do need to reform that. But I think people who are already in that age group, they need to know that that will remain the same for them as well. We need to look at solutions for people who are younger and coming up. You know, maybe we need to look into some kind of other program for them to invest in. Maybe we need to start to increase the retirement age because people are living longer and spending more time in retirement. But we do know that all these programs, we need to reform them, as well as, you know, really direct it to the people who truly need it, you know, the very poor that do not have the resources available for them.
You know, everybody can sit up here and cast blame and do all this, but at the end of the day, these are problems we have to solve. And we need to send people with solutions to solve the problems. One thing I'd like to point out, when I talk to people in the 12th Congressional District, these are not people that enjoy living off the government. These are people that want jobs, they want to provide for their family, they want to do these things, and we need to make sure we give them the opportunity to do that. We need people, in '96, the Welfare Reform Act, remember? Oh, it was the most horrible thing, you know, Republicans are evil, we're doing all this stuff. Bill Clinton, everywhere he goes now, claims that he was the guy that championed that legislation, okay? So, I mean, we're right on the issues, folks, and we need people that can go out there and articulate the fact that we are right on the issues. We need to send people out there that talk about the fact that, you know, we're not going to throw seniors under the bus. If you're a senior citizen, it's not going to change for you. If you're older than 55, it's not going to change for you. We need to send people out there that can articulate, though, that we're not just the party of no, we're the party of solutions. If we're going to improve some of these things, you mentioned Medicaid, Medicare, we need to make sure that healthcare access, healthcare quality, healthcare costs all improve for our folks, and there's a way to do that. We need to make sure that people can go across state lines to buy healthcare insurance. We need to make sure that there's no longer a disconnect between the end user and the provider. We need to make sure there's market influences. We need to make sure that people have access to these things. And finally, you're right, there was a lot of media hype. But let me point out that, you know, all this, I tell my folks all the time, my family, my friends, I say, it's amazing to me that with all the media hype out there, Republicans can still win. It's amazing to me, and we can win because we're right on the issue, and we need to send people out there that will articulate this issue to the voters.
Great nations have fallen from debt. The Roman Empire, the Byzantine Empire, the Ottoman Empire, even the Soviet Union. We caused them to have to spend so much to keep up with the arms race they couldn't, and they went bankrupt. In the last 30 years, America's gone from the largest creditor nation to the largest debtor nation. And our president is determined to get us more in debt. Your ideas on how to stop this runaway train?
It's multifactorial. First, we got to stop the spending. We got to get back to Economics 101. As I alluded to earlier, if we lower the taxes, have true tax reform, we'll be able to create jobs that will increase revenue, and we'll be able to pay off our debt. Besides that, you know, creating more of the jobs, we also need to do more of the energy independence. This will also create jobs, put people back to work. That will also increase revenue and pay off our national debt. We need to get rid of the overbloated federal government. Like I said, we need to audit them and get rid of what doesn't work, what can be better done at a state level. And we need people who can make those kind of tough decisions. I make tough decisions every day as a psychiatric nurse. I do get the calls at 3 a.m. in the morning from people who are suicidal, homicidal, and thank God in 34 years I've never lost anyone because I've worked with those people and been able to help them. And so I'm the person that can come up with some real solutions to help not only the people but our government as well.
The question was basically how to eliminate debt.
Yeah.
Our president is determined to get us more in debt, and it has terrible consequences for the country. What can we do to stop this president?
I think people need to understand, you know, Obamacare wasn't about fixing healthcare. It was about taking 1/6 of the economy, putting it under government control. If we increase the debt at the federal level, the state level, you're taking power away from the constituents, you're putting it in the federal hands. We need to make sure we stop doing that. I think one thing, you know, the Republican Party has done good the last couple of years. It's been below the radar, and we've changed the conversation. When was the last time people in Washington, D.C. were debating how much to cut? And that's what we're debating now, how much to cut. We need to send more people out there that articulate that message. There's ways to tackle the debt. I mean, you got to defeat the president. You got to get Republicans elected to the Senate. You got to get Republicans elected to the House. And once you do that, then you put market reforms, tax reforms, spending reforms in that will tackle the debt problem so that it's not a national security problem. It's not a burden on the taxpayers going forward. How do you do that? Well, resolve the tax situation. You've got to create a robust economy, a place where people want to come start a business, where businesses exist, want to expand, where more people are in the workforce. You know, I tell my Democrat friends all the time, now, time out. You want to increase taxes on smoking, or on tobacco products, because that will decrease smoking, right? Well, then when you increase taxes on working, investing, and saving, aren't you going to decrease working, investing, and saving? I mean, it doesn't make any sense to me, you know? Folks, we need people out there that understand how public policy impacts the economy. You get a robust economy, you drive more revenue to government because the economy is robust, not because fewer people are paying more, because more people are paying just a little bit. And that's how you solve the problem. You got to pay down the debt, you got to reform spending and taxes.
As you mentioned in your question, the empires that have fallen, you know, and I mentioned earlier that countries have just killed themselves within. You know, I believe that it's true here, and I believe again, it's partisan politics. We need to send what I witnessed a year ago or so during the debt ceiling debate. Who stood up and fought the fight of just not rubber stamping the debt ceiling debate? It was the grassroots conservatives, the Republicans, freshman Republicans that were swept into the House. and they got the majority, and they're the ones that stood up and fought the fight. We need to send grassroots true conservatives to save this country, to get up there, and I can't emphasize this enough. You send political insiders in the Democratic Party or the Republican Party, they're going to go up there, join hands, go to the Capitol Hill Club, have a good old time, and see what they can do together to take care of their back so they can get reelected. It's a vicious cycle. We better start paying attention. We better start paying attention and send people that want to go there and make a difference, because I've got something at stake. I've got 5 kids and 5 grandchildren in their future, and I've got in this to take a stand for them.
You guys can go louder.
Another good question from Greg, my compatriot here. According to the United States Constitution, members of the House of Representatives have the sole power of impeachment. How would you exercise that power? And what criteria would you use with regard to the use of this power?
Well, I think conversations like this can't be taken lightly. I think, you know, when you're running for election, people throw stuff out there all the time because they want you to fight. And they want you to say, I want to do this, I want to do this, throw the red meat to the crowd. And I think we need to send people out there that aren't going to point and shake hands and yell at people and, you know, and bully people and stuff like that. You need people who can go with solutions. And, you know, if the Republican Party gets into these types of debates, I think, you know, we're going to run into a buzzsaw. Because the American people don't want partisan politics. They want people who are going to solve problems. Are we going to win with Paul Ryan? Yes, we're going to win with Paul Ryan. Are we going to win with people that just get angry and go out there and yell at people? And we're not going to win that way. So impeachment's a very serious topic. Impeachment's there for a reason. It's founding father. I mean, it's there because and it's not just the president. It's elected officials. I mean, if an elected official is breaking the law, if an elected official doing things that they shouldn't be doing unethically, I mean, they need to be held accountable. And so, I mean, that's obviously the yardstick I would use to measure decisions like that. But again, you know, the Republican Party needs to be the party of solutions because we're right on the issues. We're right on the issues, and if we get out there and we articulate the issues, if we don't get angry and yell and scream, if we go out there and articulate the issues, we will win. We will win constantly because the American people will listen to us and they'll see that we're right. They don't like what this president's doing, but we're not going to win it by being more angry than the president is. We're going to win by being smarter than the president is. By talking about issues, by talking about solutions. That's what I'm going to do. Obviously, if there's an elected official, a fellow member of the House, a senator, a president, another cabinet officer that's doing things unethically or illegally, we will do what we have to do. But right now, this is about solving problems, and that's what I'm here to do.
It depends what the definition of is. Impeachment is a serious responsibility of members of Congress. And, you know, of course, most of us here lived through President Clinton's, the embarrassment to our country and what happened there. Currently, Eric Holder, fast and furious. You have some members of Congress calling for his head to be impeached. Again, we don't have the information that a sitting congressman or woman has. But, you know, that comes before you have to take it seriously, because to be impeached out of office is a very serious crime, and I don't think I could add more to that.
I'll tell you what I won't do. I won't use it as a political witch hunt because it is a very serious matter, and it has to be a true crime or an issue of corruption. Just because someone has bad policies doesn't mean that that's impeachable. And so again, and it also is very expensive to go through an impeachment process. And I won't put that extra burden on the taxpayer unless it's absolutely warranted.
Okay. I'm told this is the last question. So, in Illinois, the Democrats believe that building a high-speed rail system is crucial to the infrastructure of our state. They say it'll provide jobs. So could you comment on this? Do you agree? Should we continue to fund this endeavor? Or if you disagree with that, what kind of infrastructure project would you support?
I would not. I think our country's broke. I don't know the exact dollar figure for this Pork Barrel project, but I can assure you, from Metrolink to Mid-America Airport to high-speed rail, to get people from Chicago to St. Louis quicker, we're broke. We've got many other needs in this country, in this district. We've got the levees problem that go from Alton all the way down to Cairo. We've got infrastructure needs. We've got plenty that we could spend money to in a better way. If you want to get to Chicago from St. Louis quick, fly. So yeah, I think we all, too often they look at it and they say this is a big job creator. We can put all these people, they're all temporary job, construction jobs, and then all of a sudden it's going to cost this much to operate it. We know it's going to cost a lot more. So I don't even think it's something we can seriously look at in this time.
There was a study done where they took 6 countries in Europe, to make it about the size of the U.S., and they evaluated all forms of rail, including high speed. And they looked at how much it cost, and then they figured out only 7.9% of people were actually using the rail system. Europeans were using the car more. And so they found out that, they really were not getting a good return on all the money that they were spending for this. But saying that, we do need to fix our infrastructure. The American Society of Civil Engineers gave our infrastructure a D grade. Just to bring it up to a C, it would cost $2 trillion to do this. Well, where's the money? The gas tax was supposed to go for infrastructure, but it's not there because the greedy politicians who had robbed it. So we need to keep that like a lockbox so that we can put to infrastructure, as well as I think we need to have an independent committee that will prioritize the different projects and not just go to the most powerful congressperson there.
I think it's very important and that we send people to Washington, D.C. that understand how government works. I mean, and are going to provide solutions to this type of stuff. I mean, there is a committee in Washington, D.C. that does prioritize these things already. When I was running for lieutenant governor, high-speed rail was a big topic. A lot of people wanted it. And even when I was running for election and people wanted it, I stood up against it. And I have to disagree with the premise of your question. I do not believe it's crucial to the infrastructure of the state of Illinois at all. What is crucial to the infrastructure of the state of Illinois are the roads in Chester, Illinois, which are deteriorating under the load of coal trucks that are hauling coal from mines to the ports. And literally the streets in Chester are falling apart, and we're not fixing the streets in Chester. We need to make sure in the coal congressional district, we're getting that coal to the ports. We need to make sure the levees in the Pulaski, Alexander County area, the levees up here in the Metro East aren't going to ruin our property tax and all that. We need to make sure that those levees are utilized and make sure that our wonderful agricultural products get to the river and get to the world markets. I mean, this is what it's about. It's not about pork barrel spending to satisfy some constituency. It is about improving America. I think the government is there for certain roles. My first answer, I said, government's there for certain reasons. And, I don't think high-speed rail, it's not even high-speed if you look at the measurements, actually. But high-speed rail is not the answer to it. It's not crucial to the infrastructure. What is crucial to the infrastructure is making sure that the roads and whatnot downstate aren't falling apart, our levees aren't collapsing, and that our people have every asset at their hands to make sure they compete in the world marketplace.
And that ends the forum. I got a couple of closing comments to make. We have some other people in the audience that are running for office. I'm going to name them and ask them to stand so we can see who they are. Dave Barnes. He's running for Senate District 57. Richard Davis is running County Board District 12. Linda Holt, running for State Rep 113. Our own John McLean is running for the Chairman of the County Board. Ryan Stuckey, running for State Rep 114. And Charlie Lee, St. Clair County Board, District 20. Nick Miller, you weren't on the list. County Board, District 4. For those of you that don't think we're making an impact, I just want to say I think we are. We have 3 excellent candidates here, and I'd like to give them a hand. And Jason tells me that we have all 3 of the presidential candidates coming into the area, 17th, and the 19th, did you say?
Yes, it's been a long time since Illinois played a big role in the Republican presidential primary, so I know Rick Santorum's coming in on the 17th in Fairview Heights. I know Newt Gingrich is coming in the 17th, I think to Marion, Mount Vernon, and maybe the Metro East. Romney's coming in on the 19th, I think to Peoria, and then to the Metro East. And then Jeff, I'm sure Ron Paul is going to be coming through too, because I know Ron Paul has been here before as well. So, I mean, if you have an opportunity to get out and see the presidential candidates, do it, because we need to get someone that's going to defeat this president.
Just for the last thing, I just wanted to say that we must be doing something right, because it seems like we have the Democrats here monitoring what we're doing and trying to figure out what our weaknesses are. So,
one more. I'd like to thank our moderators for what they've done.
thank you. Don't forget to contribute, especially our friends from the Democratic Party. Feel free to contribute to the Packard Club.